If I had my way, I was going to end it. And whatever it took to do it, I would do it.
We salute you, those of us who are the benefits of what you've done. But more importantly,
I don't think he should salute me because we didn't do enough. And to a large extent, what we did has had both salutary and detrimental consequences to African American people. And one of the reasons in my mind, perhaps not in the minds of others, is that it was necessary to end segregation, because the life that you know now and have had for the last 50 years, you could not have had it had there been segregation. But integration in itself is not sufficient, because we as Africans and the descendants of Africans have a peculiar history and a peculiar relationship to this country that for too long a period of time, our lives have not mattered because we weren't allowed to have an aspirational life of our own. We could be the aspiration of others as their property during slavery and during the Jim Crow period, to be exploited as cheap and unpaid labor, but to have aspirations to be, say, an architect, or to be a dancer or a singer, or a baseball player. That was denied us under the segregated system. And under integration, we seem to feel that it's sufficient that we're able to be physically in the proximity or next to white people. And that is not sufficient. That we should have a consciousness as a people that we have to work harder and be more purposeful than perhaps other people, because our history has been so different. And we are not privileged even today in this society. Look at our president. I mean, the president, of course, has many things that he's done I don't agree with and I criticize him for, but the things that he has done, he's not recognized for. And he's trashed, as almost all other African Americans are. They're trashed, they're ignored. And their contributions are virtually ignored. It's virtually next to impossible for African American to be published, especially if his publication is critical. It's almost, and to be recognized, one of the most difficult things in the country to be recognized is as a scholar. Who wants to accept the scholarship of African Americans, particularly if that scholarship is sensitive and critical of what has gone on in the past and points to a new direction in the future. So we have lots of work to do to bring our brothers and sisters along. I hate to use this phrase, to have them pull up their pants, but that's because their pants is down, it's not really the problem. The problem is someplace else. I don't know if I have a question or not to answer.
that's it. I feel like I've got very good material.
You will edit it, right?
No, I'm gonna put the whole thing up there,
Yeah.
from start to finish.
No, you got to edit some of this.
Is there anything you want to add, Howard, that we might not have touched on? Because this will be up forever, so, I mean, imagine going to the Lincoln Memorial and actually being able to hear Lincoln.
Yeah.
You know, if you, so this will be up, so it, you know.
Well, I think here in Atlanta, we should be proud of our history and aware of many, many people who contributed to that history. For example, a lot of us who live today don't realize that Dr. W.E. Du Bois taught here in Atlanta, that the house in which he lived is still standing in Atlanta. It's at the corner of Beckwith and what once was Chestnut Street. I think it's Brawley Way. It's right there at the corner. I don't know whether there's a historical marker or not, but it should be one to recognize Dr. W.E. Du Bois and his contribution to scholarship. There is an awareness of Atlanta as the center of African American higher education in the United States and perhaps the world. There's no other place, I think, in the world where there are as many colleges and universities dedicated to African Americans as there is in Atlanta. And what that means to have these centers of education, because you have to have educated people. Every time you look at a significant development, you find that there's someone who had an education involved. Like, for example, I used to travel with Vernon Jordan when he was field secretary for the NAACP. He worked in our office, too, before I got there, our law office. And we would go on Sundays to various churches and things outside of Atlanta. And some of the churches were really just shotgun churches and lean-to churches, you know. But they would have a choir. And the leader of the choir was invariably someone who had gone to a school in Atlanta and studied music. And the choir sang so eloquently and with such passion. And one of the reasons for that is because it had educated leadership, someone trained in music and who could lead them and teach them how to harmonize and how to fully make their voices so powerful and strong, you know. So you have to have educated people. And to be educated, you have to read. And we don't think of African Americans as reading, but you go to the public library in Atlanta and you find a lot of people in that library, and they're African Americans, looking for knowledge, looking for books. But we have to be readers, because our society is a literate society, even though it's not really a reader society. The more you read, the more you discover, the more you know. And the more you know, the more powerful you become. Take my brother-in-law who recently passed, Julian Bond. I mean, what elevated him above the masses, not because he was born to a family of scholars, his mother and father, who were educated, PhD, his mother master's degree, you know. It was because of his own personal involvement in reading, in the eloquence of his voice, who could summarize complex matters in pithy declaratory sentences and speak with eloquence under fire to the whole world. So, you know, he's remembered for that, and he'll be missed for that.